My husband is divorcing me because his mistress gave him an ultimatum. But then, when she gets pregnant by her other lover, he wants to come back because he's all alone. This all began when my husband returned from the gym one day and announced he wanted a divorce. Up until that very moment, I hadn't received any warning or even the slightest hint of what was happening. That day, he walked in from the gym, set down his bag, and bluntly told me that he could no longer continue being married to me. The reason, he explained, was that he had been seeing someone else for the past 8 months. He even told me the woman's name, although to be perfectly honest, I don't recall it now. What I do distinctly remember is that she was someone he knew from his gym, which made perfect sense. She had given him an ultimatum that very day. In his exact words, he had to file for divorce before the end of the month or their relationship would be completely over. The ironic part is that I had his clean gym clothes ready for him so he could go out and meet girls without stinking. Well, he stank anyway because he was a damn cheater. I might have been in shock or whatever, but I told him it was fine. Looking back, I don't think there was a better response. Begging him to stay wouldn't have worked, and telling him what a despicable human being he was wouldn't have made me feel any better. You can believe me on that last part because I did have my moment to yell at him, and it didn't improve how I felt. Even so, he was very chatty and wanted to justify things. He said things like she was serious about the deadline, and that he didn't want to lose her, as if it were a limited time offer he couldn't pass up and would be stupid not to take. He was stupid either way, but he hadn't realized it yet. I replied that all I wanted was for him to thank this bitch, and yes, I used the word bitch because she was taking a cheater off my hands. It's like someone walking into your house without permission, taking your trash bag, tying it up, and taking it home to sleep with it. I don't want to be judgmental, everyone has their fetishes, but as for me, it was a positive thing. It saved me from taking out the trash in the middle of the night. Even so, he kept giving me unsolicited details. They did it in his car after workouts, sometimes at her apartment when her roommate wasn't around, and sometimes in hotels when they wanted more time. I asked him to spare me the details because I wasn't interested, and he wasn't going to get forgiveness or anything similar if that's what he was seeking. He asked me not to take it the wrong way, that I wasn't the problem, and that these things just happen. I repeated in my demonic voice for him to take his things and leave because I was starting to lose my patience. He asked if I had washed his clothes, wondering if he could take the clean ones. And yes, I had. So I told him to wait while I went to the laundry room to get them. That way, he could collect his other belongings from the bedroom and speed things up. Unfortunately, the laundry room is past the kitchen, and everyone knows the kitchen is the most dangerous place in the house. Tomato sauce and chocolate can accidentally fall in an unprovoked and involuntary manner, things that are also quite difficult to remove if you're not careful. Another thing is blood, but I wasn't accidentally going to break my future ex's nose, although only God knows how much I wanted to. Maybe one of his favorite t-shirts also passed too close to the stove. I was in that clumsy mode where everything goes wrong because your head is somewhere else. I had just received very difficult news to digest and wasn't thinking clearly. The next morning, I called a lawyer to start preparing to sever all legal ties with this treacherous rat. Turns out I didn't know this, but inheritances are excluded from divorce settlements. I don't know if my ex was thinking about that, but I spent the entire night obsessing over that money. My grandmother had left me a considerable sum about 3 years ago, around $400,000 from a house and money in her accounts. All I could think about that night was, I'm going to have to share the money with this deadbeat. Turns out, no. My lawyer gave me the best news of all. The house was in both our names, but I made the entire down payment with my inheritance. He contributed to the monthly payments, but that was it. Our joint savings were minimal. Most of our savings came from the inheritance, so that was fine. Fast forward to the day he finally moved out and took the rest of his things, which was quite a spectacle. She actually came to help him pack. This woman showed up at our house with boxes and containers, helping my husband load his belongings while I oversaw the whole affair. I said she did me a favor, but someone who steals and has relations with a trash bag isn't someone I'd consider very trustworthy. She was exactly what I expected. Full makeup at 10 a.m., fake eyelashes, spray tan, tight gym clothes accentuating her body. She kept glancing at me whenever she could, and I even think she was imagining she'd won something by taking this man. I don't know who would think taking a married man was a victory. I didn't hide. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I just stood there watching them work. I held her gaze every time she looked my way. Eventually, she became uncomfortable and started avoiding eye contact. He seemed ashamed, with his head down, working faster. In less than 2 hours, they were gone. The settlement negotiations began, and he wanted to split everything 50-50. But my lawyer asked him where he thought he was going. The house was predominantly mine because I had contributed more than him, and it would be divided proportionally. The furniture was mostly mine from before the marriage. And yes, of course, he wanted half of my inheritance, but even his own lawyer had to whisper in his ear during one of our meetings that this wasn't going to happen. He still argued with his own lawyer, demanding compensation for being my husband. Unfortunately, he earned more than I did, so he didn't even qualify for spousal support. I think he was speaking on behalf of his new girlfriend because I had never heard him be so foolish. The divorce proceeded quickly, but not thanks to him. It was because of his lawyer. His lawyer essentially recommended wrapping things up as soon as possible because he wasn't going to get anything. I paid my share of the apartment, which wasn't much. We split our meager savings, about $3,000 each, and we each kept our cars. I was 32 and single again. It was time to start working a little more on myself and reevaluate life choices. I don't think I was neglected, but I could lose a few pounds here and there, and also improve my diet to look a bit better. At the same time, I looked at my job situation. I had been on autopilot for years, comfortable, underpaid, and unchallenged. He used to discourage me from seeking other opportunities, saying I should be grateful for stability and not risk what I had. I started aggressively applying for new positions. In time, I received 2 good offers. I didn't take the one that paid more than my current salary, but rather the one with more growth opportunities. I had a lot of time on my hands, so I could give my career a real chance. I started doing some physical activity, going for runs, moving around a bit. I thought about joining a gym, but the mere thought of stepping into one made my anger flare up. That rage, however, served as motivation on days I didn't want to go for a run. Another area where I improved was my social life. It had died during the marriage. He didn't like me going out without him. He would make comments about how couples should want to spend time together every time I mentioned plans with friends. Little by little, I stopped making plans. Friends stopped inviting me because I always said no. I started reaching out to people I hadn't seen in months or years. I started saying yes to everything: concerts, restaurants, weekend trips. I barely used social media during the marriage. He was annoyed when I posted photos, saying it was seeking attention and superficial. I created a new Instagram account and started using it for real. I uploaded a photo from a hike with friends. 2 days later, he asked to follow my new account. I declined. Then a message came through a friend asking why I hadn't accepted him. When my friend asked, using my ex-husband's name, I said I didn't know anyone by that name. His brother approached me in a coffee shop a few weeks later. He told me I looked very different. I thanked him and kept it brief. We talked about a few other things, nothing related to my ex, but he mentioned that things with the girlfriend were complicated. I tried not to sound sarcastic when I said, "How terrible," but I didn't do a very good job. That brings us to the day my ex showed up at my house unannounced on a Saturday night. I saw him on the camera because I wasn't going to open the door at that hour. I spoke through the intercom and jokingly told him I didn't want a speech about eternal salvation and wasn't very interested in religion. He said it was his ex, that he needed to talk about something important. I told him to call my office and make a formal request. I was playing with him. I didn't care what he had to say. He probably doesn't even know where I work now. And if he actually called to do that, they would laugh, and loudly. He stayed out there for about 30 minutes, like he was trying to leave and then returning. I can imagine his internal monologue. I have to be strong and talk to her, but at the same time, she won't open the door for me. The next day, I received an email to my personal address that clearly wasn't proofread. It was like a first draft, and he didn't even bother to check if it was coherent. It was also full of spelling errors, so I can assume it was his initial version. His girlfriend was pregnant, but he doubted it was his. He spoke of all the clues that made him believe this woman might have had an affair. I don't know why, but it was as if he saw me as a friend he needed to vent to. He wanted to meet me for coffee and talk about it, saying he missed our friendship and my advice. I deleted it without replying. Another email arrived a week later, after he confronted her about the pregnancy. She admitted she had been seeing someone else casually, but swore the baby was his. She also argued that she didn't think they were exclusive because she put up with him while he was with me. Frankly, I agree with her. If you're such a scumbag to cheat on your wife, you can't expect your mistress, who slept with you while you were married, to be very faithful. According to the email, which was a little better written, he didn't believe anything she said. He also mentioned that he had seen recent photos of me and that I looked amazing. Thanks for the compliment, trash bag. I had a date planned for New Year's, my first since the divorce. I met him through friends and we had been talking for a few weeks. Nothing serious yet, but he was someone interesting to talk to, although being attractive wasn't bad either. Meanwhile, I heard from several sources that he was doing poorly. They argued almost every day, and he would go to sleep at friends' houses. Some of these friends even thought his girlfriend was sleeping with someone else when he left her alone those nights. His parents were disappointed in him. I didn't talk much about my ex-in-laws, but no parent wants that for their child. His emails stopped coming because they were blocked, so I wasn't getting any more direct updates from him. However, his brother wrote to me to say that he was getting worse. Apparently, he was drinking a lot, had stopped going to the gym, and looked neglected. He didn't want me to get back with him, but asked if I would consider seeing him just to give him closure. I replied that I don't do charity and to stop talking to me about his brother. Because of the good relationship I had with him, I wouldn't block him, but he had to stop telling me things about his brother or asking me for help. If he didn't, I would block him too. I learned that he had moved out of the place he shared with his girlfriend and that they were officially separated now. He was living with his parents, who were charging him rent and treating him like a teenager, with chores and rules. Apparently, his father told him he needed to grow up and face consequences. I know this because his mother and I spoke one day. Not about that specifically, but she felt she needed to apologize for everything her son had done to me. She and her husband were disappointed in him, and seeing him return home as a failure was painful for them as parents. She told me I handled everything with grace. I don't think she knows the full story about the clean clothes on the day he left home. She was happy for me, for how my life was going, and told me not to worry about my ex's brother either. Also, at the same time, I officially started dating this man I met. There was no way in the world, not even with a gun to my head, that I would ever go back with my ex. I was already in a relationship, I wouldn't date a cheater, and I certainly wasn't going to get another woman's trash bag back. Through word of mouth, I found out she had been fired after her affair was discovered at her workplace. The man she was cheating on my ex with was a married guy from her job. Both were fired when his wife filed a formal complaint with HR. Some places don't want their employees to have a relationship without reporting it, in case of future legal problems. Well, infidelity wasn't one of those things you could report to HR. You can't go to their office and ask for a Form 3083 for extramarital affairs. Lastly, in this story, my ex showed up at a yoga studio I had started attending some time ago. Not only did he show up there like a stalker, which he was, but he also interrupted the class while we were expanding our chakras. Not really. We were just finishing our warm-up, but I like to tell the story that way for dramatic effect. I went straight to the reception desk and asked for him to be removed. The owner of the place came out of the office and escorted him out. I also filed a police report for harassment to create a record, while my lawyer drafted a cease and desist document to prevent him from contacting me further. Anyway, I sent it to his parents' house because I knew he would be there, and my mother-in-law told me how disappointed she was in him. She also gave him a smack on the head and told him to pull his head out of his backside or he'd be kicked out. Even his brother called me to say he told him he was an idiot and that he would deal with him himself if he ever did something like that again. Anyway, I don't know whose child his ex-girlfriend is expecting, but this is the story of my ex. The failure. His family doesn't want him. I don't want him. The yoga studio doesn't want him. Where do I go? Edit. The time I lost my patience with him and told him a few things was when he came back home a week after leaving. Sorry, I forgot. He needed something he hadn't taken the first time. He called to say he was coming by, but I asked him not to unless I was there. He did it anyway, and when I returned home and found him, I didn't speak to him in language appropriate for a gala dinner. Let's just say words like penis, fall off, rot, shove it, rat, sewer, expletive, and idiot were used. I'll leave it to you to connect them and form the story. I couldn't change the locks, according to my lawyer, until we were further along in the divorce because it was technically still his house. Luckily, the next time he came, it was while I was there. That's when he brought his sewer rat, whom he shoved his penis into when he was very lucky it didn't fall off because it was ruined by sleeping with a goddamn idiot who was just as idiotic as him. Oops, I think I gave you the answer to the assignment. Update 1. I wasn't planning on doing an update, but everyone is asking me for information about my ex, whose baby it is, or to correct the assignment I gave you. So here's what I've found out. Our social circle is very interconnected, and from time to time, I talk to his family because we have a good relationship. We almost never talk about him, but sometimes things come up in conversation because he's related to them. Someone from his work approached me at a networking event. I know him because we work in the same sector. We started talking and he filled in the gaps I was missing. To begin with, it's no secret at his company that the paternity test was negative. I don't know whose baby it is, but it's not my ex's. He was already drinking, but after the news, he drank even more. They know this because he would go out drinking with colleagues after work, and he was doing it in a worrying way. Also because his performance plummeted. He called in sick several times a week, missed important deadlines, and arrived late looking like he hadn't slept. He was fired shortly before I ran into that colleague. Before the test, he was already showing some worrying signs, but he went downhill after the DNA test. Almost at the same time, I also received news about the ex-girlfriend. In my sector, people know each other well, and I know someone within her former company. When we happened to work together on a project, and knowing part of my story, he told me some interesting things. Not only were they fired, but the company was suing them. There were inappropriate emails and messages in the internal messaging system. During that conversation, they were still going through the lawsuit, and I don't know if it has ended. Almost when he was fired, his parents gave him an ultimatum. He could go to AA meetings and get a new job, or he could be out on the street. They gave him about a week to get his life in order, but after 3 days, he came back drunk. Because of this, the next time he went out drinking, which was the very next day, his father put all his things out on the street. He arrived home that night quite intoxicated. They had an argument, but they didn't let him in. He left with some things, and later a friend returned to pick up the rest. Now here's the interesting part. I have a good relationship with his brother, but even more so with his wife. Let's just say we're friends, and we occasionally meet for drinks or dinner. Sometimes the brother joins us, and sometimes it's just a girls' night out. In fact, they've already met my new boyfriend. As you know, I asked the brother not to talk to me about my ex anymore, but you know how girls are, and his wife needed to tell me some things that had happened. I don't know how to say this gently, so I'll just say it. My ex got one of his friend's wives pregnant. It's not fully confirmed that it's his child, but the friend is sure it's not his and wants a paternity test when the baby is born. Now, why did the brother's wife tell me? Because my ex went to my brother-in-law's house looking for political asylum, so to speak. He needed a safe place so they wouldn't hit him again and for his older brother to protect him. Yes, he was literally crying at his brother's door, begging him to let him stay there because he was afraid of what they were going to do to him. His brother doesn't want him there. He thinks the same as his parents if they kicked him out. Then my ex told him not to listen to his controlling wife because he thought it was she who wouldn't let him stay. Something that is somewhat true because she doesn't want my ex in her house, but also the brother wants nothing to do with a drunk who can't get his life together. They also believe he was drunk the day he went to ask to stay because he cried a lot and looked terrible. When he told him that his wife was controlling and a little witch, plus some things related to not being able to get pregnant, he had to give him a few slaps in the face that quickly made him sit on the lawn, and in fact, his brother saved his life. I think his wife would have murdered my ex on the spot, dug a grave, held the funeral, and buried him if her husband hadn't stopped her and dealt with his brother himself. He told him not to come back to their house again because my ex would have to call the police. Yes, he would have to call the police because his life would be in danger if he saw him around. Now, why was my ex afraid for his life and needed his brother's protection and almost lost his life at the hands of his sister-in-law? When the friend found out about his wife's infidelity, he went to the friend's house where my ex was staying, and they had to restrain him. The friend who owned the house had to call another friend who lived nearby to help restrain the friend who wanted to beat him up. He's a big guy and was out of his mind. He even hit my ex a lot before the homeowner finished the call and tried to control him, although it wasn't until the third person arrived that they were able to stop him. My ex is afraid that next time there won't be anyone around to defend him. And he thought his brother, who is a bit bigger in size than him, could be his bodyguard. Speaking to his brother, he has no intention of protecting him and even hopes the friend finds him and gives him a beating. He just wishes someone would let him know so he could witness it. He wouldn't tell his wife anything because she would also join in the beating. Maybe the other friend holds him while the brother's wife kicks him in the testicles. So it's better that the wife doesn't find out there's a beating in progress for my ex because he doesn't want to have conjugal visits in jail for smashing his balls. I love that my ex is no longer my problem and that his own idiocy gets him into these situations. It's good that I don't care about that man anymore, although part of me wishes he'd get his balls kicked as hard as possible, perhaps hiring an American football kicker for the task. Not just for what he did to me, but for what he said to his sister-in-law, to his friends, to everyone. I don't understand how people like him can breathe the same air as us, while my grandmother is no longer here. Life isn't fair, but with a few kicks to the balls, it would be a little bit. Update 2. I'm doing this update because 93% of the messages I receive asking for an update are to know if my ex's balls were kicked. And yes, they were, which is why the world is a little better today. I have more to tell you, but let's start with that. My ex went to the house when his brother wasn't there. I think he thought that with his brother absent, things wouldn't go so badly. First mistake of the day. Then he thought about apologizing to his sister-in-law. My sister-in-law has conception problems, and it's something that affects her deeply. Saying something to a woman about that can be one of the worst offenses. And she hadn't gotten over it when my ex showed up to apologize. It also didn't help to tell her that she must be doing something wrong because he got someone pregnant without even trying. Second mistake of the day. He said it because she refused to accept his apologies, and he got angry with her. He received a kick to the balls and was then saved by a neighbor who was passing by, walking his dog. Third mistake of the day. Thinking his brother wouldn't find out. He tracked him down to where he was staying and gave him a couple more slaps. His brother doesn't want to go to jail for assault, but his slaps can be quite strong. He trained in fighting when he was younger. The friend who wanted to hit him didn't find him or didn't try to look for him. If his brother found him, it shouldn't have been very difficult. The child is my ex's, so he will have to pay child support. But he has left town. He's living in another state with a friend who got him a job. My ex said something about starting over when he said goodbye to his parents. He didn't want to approach his brother's house. His parents didn't hit him, but they refused to say goodbye and told him to come back when he had recovered in a couple of years. My in-laws also weren't too pleased with what he said to their daughter-in-law, or what he did to his friend. This friend is someone he has known for many years. He's like part of the family. If he doesn't change, if he doesn't show real improvement, they don't want to see him around. He didn't leave with the mother of his child, but he has to pay child support until the child turns 18. Regarding the company's lawsuit against my ex's ex-girlfriend, no one has told me anything. I haven't run into that person again, and I'm not sure how much she would know. It was a minor lawsuit, so it's possible it was settled privately without going to court. And if it was a private lawsuit, only the parties involved would know the agreement they reached. In the new city where my ex is now, I don't know anyone, so I can only imagine the kind of trouble he'll get into if he doesn't get his life in order. Edit. 93% is just a way of saying I got asked a lot. It's not a scientific study, but someone should study if that affected my post. Yes, it's possible my ex doesn't have any balls, but it hurt him. It definitely hurt him, as he was screaming for help on the ground after being kicked. His sister-in-law was circling him, trying to find the angle to kick him again. This is why people should have cameras in their homes. I would play that video at every Christmas dinner,